What's your favorite Generation 8 starter? It's that time of year again, folks. What's going on, Chaotix? I am Chaos, and today, let's discuss the starters for Generation 8. I'll be covering the starters of the Galar region by giving my impressions about these Pokemon and what their final evolutions might look like. I'll also be covering potential secondary typings and what role these Pokemon will fill on your team as you play through this generation. With all that being said, sit back and relax as we enter the world of Pokemon. Let's start with my second favorite, Brookie, the grass starter. Now from what we know, it has a stick thing that it hides in its fur. Initially I thought that this species would be based on the Barbarian Macaque. I thought it would be more like Curious George, since the curiosity is a part of Brookie's Dex entry that we found out from the trailer. They don't appear in the UK though, typically, the Barbarian Macaques, but they do live in an area that is a UK territory known as Gibraltar, serving as the prime example of a tourist attraction for this area. But it would make sense that these would be what Brookie is based on, since the starter Pokemon are typically rare Pokemon in their games. Despite this, Brookie shares many features of the Barbarian Macaque, such as facial patterns, but there is one giant difference: the tail. The Macaque has a stubby tail, while Brookie has a tail that is almost hook-like, allowing it to swing off of branches most likely. The Barbarian Macaque is actually the only European monkey, and it also has no tail. So it's the best thing we got. I think it would be a major part of the design for it to have this tail, or not to have a tail, based on what it's based off of. So not having that big of a tail on Brookie is kind of interesting in the design. But I find it highly unlikely that another form of ape would be chosen for the basis of this design, as previously mentioned, because there are no other monkeys in Europe, so it's hard to make a case for any other animal. I'd rather believe that they took the trend of the other types of monkeys with the tail and put that on the starter Pokemon, since most people recognize that monkeys typically have a tail and would not probably understand that macaques typically don't. As for what the final evolution would be, I think Brookie would remain sleek in design, and rather than becoming a giant like gorilla, as in Godzilla, it would be more likely a slim design and named Bru Kong. It would be relatively small in comparison to the previous starters, probably only being about 2 feet tall and weighing about 50 pounds to resemble the macaques being very small monkeys. But this probably is going to be scaled up a bit to make it similar to the other starters, so I would see the minimum being about 3 feet, probably to 4 feet, somewhere in there, 3 to 4 feet tall, and weighing about 175 to 250 pounds, somewhere in that range. If this Pokemon would get a secondary typing, I could see it being a fighting type due to the stick, maybe a ground type or a rock type as well, but I could just see this staying as a regular grass type. I don't think it really needs a secondary typing. Bru Kong should have the boost from the stick if it holds it as an item, such as that Farfetch does, because it does have a stick. And I think all Pokemon who hold like a stick or something like that should get the benefit from the stick item, since they kind of already have a stick. It would just make sense on this thing. Bru Kong's role would be an average Pokemon with similar base stats in all of its stats. The highest stats would most likely be in HP and defense. Attack also could be high, but I think that its special attack would also be its lowest attack stat and lowest stat overall. I can see the stats being distributed like they are on the screen here, and it's what I've mentioned already. Now it's time to look at my least favorite starter, Scorbunny, the fire type. Now we know this thing is very energetic, and is most likely based off of the European hair, as you can see on the screen. This is likely due to the species being introduced to the UK, making it a relatively rare species and a really great choice for a starter Pokemon. I generally don't care about its design, and I really don't like the patch on its face, and I think it makes it look a little bit too much like it's from an anime of some sort. As for the final evolution, I would like to see it remaining sleek with a slightly bit more height, named Score Air. Combination of Scorbunny and Score from Scorbunny and hair. This would be about 5 to 6 feet tall and probably weighs somewhere between 185 and 215 pounds, as it is a very slim type of Pokemon and also very fast and doesn't need the weight to slow it down. I think this would look more humanoid and would have a similar dimensions to a human, and that's why I gave it the dimensions that I did. I could see an ability being something like Iron Fist or Tough Claws to boost attack. And I have heard many theories about this Pokemon, whether it would be a Fire Electric type or something else. I think Fire Electric would be a cool typing, but I think it would make it way better than the other starters, as typically the secondary typing does not help it beat the type that it's usually weak to. In this case, the electric typing would help it beat Sobble or its final evolution, unless it was a ground type. But that would have to be a water ground type at that point then. I could see this really becoming a Fire Fairy type. That's what I got from the vibe once I first saw this Pokemon. I'm like, this definitely could be a Fairy type. And I think the typing would be really cool and really worthwhile to throw into a UK region. Now this Pokemon obviously is based off of speed and offense, and would probably function as your typical glass cannon. Its highest stats would be in attack and speed, but it would struggle with its defenses. I like the stats that are on the screen for this Pokemon, and I think it makes it well-rounded as a glass cannon, but also gives you an option to maybe use physical or special attack as your attack stat. And finally, we get to my favorite of the basic forms of the Generation 8 starters, Sobble, the water type. Now from what we know, this thing hides in water and has some sort of natural camouflage. I think this is based off the spectral pygmy chameleon. This chameleon is found in West Africa, which at some point in time England controlled as a colony, so it would make sense for it to show up in a UK region. These creatures prefer colder climates, which would make them a really good candidate to be the basis of Sobble, and also maybe even able to live in the UK in general. I think this Pokemon has the best design out of the starters that we've seen, and I'm really looking forward to the final evolution. Speaking of final evolution, Weepalion will be a long lizard-like Pokemon, probably around 6 feet in length, weighing 300 pounds plus, making it the largest and the heaviest of the starter Pokemon. Although I could see this going to Brookie's final evolution as well. This could become many things, but I think it would most likely become a water poison type or a water dragon type. I think the poison type would be awesome and would make sense since some amphibians have poisonous skin, and I just like to see that on a starter Pokemon. And also I really do like the typing. But I also think that the dragon typing would be cool to see as something sort of from the lore of the medieval England, with the dragons roaming around at that point in time, and all the lore and history of stuff from England having to do with dragons. So I think that would be really cool to see in a starter type Pokemon, although the typing might be a bit busted at that point. I could also see this thing looking something like a kimono dragon, which is why I chose this art on the screen. And this Pokemon out of the starters would be the most defensive, having the best stat being probably physical defense. And I like this stat distribution, and I think it would be nice to see on this Pokemon, making it the defensive of the starter Pokemon, and also allowing it to be a decent special attacker as well. Well, that's my take on the starters for Sword and Shield. I'm hoping that Game Freak doesn't mess up Sobble, since I really enjoyed the Pokemon and it is my favorite at the moment. Of course, my favorite starter from this generation comes to what the final evolutions look like, how good they are in competitive, and which one I generally just like the most. But I think they're all pretty decent starters, to say the least. But I do have to say I favor Sobble a little bit more. And let me know what you think of these starters in the comments section down below, and also what they would be like down there as well. I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, make sure you leave a like button, hit that subscribe button down below to show your support. Make sure you check out the description for the links for my social media accounts, and thank you so much for watching. That's all I have for you today, so until next time, I am Chaos, signing off. Stay safe, and as always, burn it up.